Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Prospero.ai Stock Market Live streams. I see JC is in the chat here saying hello to everybody as we get started. Welcome, everybody. We are seeing the markets in the green as we are starting the stream today, which I believe is probably a little bit of a surprise when we saw the action on Friday, the crazy moves happening in the stock market as well as in gold, silver, Bitcoin crashing and continuing lower over the weekend. So a lot of wild swings in the market right now, but lo and behold, amidst it all, we are seeing the QQQ up over 0.5% today, SPY up over just under 0.5%, Dow Jones approaching 1%, and Russell up over 1%, all in the green on the day. The VIX is slightly up as well. At the moment, in the Prospero app, the net option sentiments for the markets, we are seeing QQQ at 5, SPY at 0. So still pretty low, but with all of that, the markets are in the green. We got a bunch of great topics to go through today. FYI, everybody, we are on a bit of a pitch count here on the stream. We'll be ending around 11:45 a.m. So we're going to try to get through all of the topics as usual, but get your comments, questions in early if you want us to bring them up on the stream today. And we're going to keep it moving at a pretty rapid speed here throughout the stream to try and get to everything. But we're going to cover the next Fed chairman being announced, Kevin Warsh. What does that mean for the markets and the future of the Fed rate cut decisions? We have updated inflation totals for the USA from Trueflation, which is now under 1%. So is the Fed risking a little bit of credibility here, not cutting with inflation being so low at the moment? And is it possible that we will see deflation in the future? We have a ton of earnings this week. It's probably even busier than last week. And Ori's saying you want to hear our thoughts on Palantir. They are one of the companies I have for us to go through today. Welcome, Ori. So many companies, it's impossible to cover all of these. So if you guys have any ones you specifically want to hear, definitely let us know in the comments. But just to run through a few each day, we have Palantir, Chipotle, PayPal, SMCI, AMD, Google, LEU, Eli Lilly, Uber, Snapchat, Amazon, Reddit, MSTR, Iron. So many this week, so many great ones. But yeah, let us know in the comments. We'll try to hit on a couple of them at least. Then covering Bitcoin dropping, as well as silver and gold, which we've been discussing a lot on the streams over the past couple of weeks as they had been rallying, and it all came to a crashing end on Friday. I didn't even know silver could make moves in the 30% range, being, multi-trillion market cap. I believe I saw a stat that said $15 trillion between gold and silver was wiped out on Friday in terms of market cap. And silver is down over 8% again today. Gold down 4.5% at the moment. So pretty wild moves we're seeing in such large market cap assets in those two things. Um, Maybe the fact that it looks like silver and gold will be cooling down, maybe that's beneficial for Bitcoin. I'm not sure. We'll ask George about it. Then we got an update from the Tesla earnings call about Elon Musk's plan to maybe merge all of his companies together. So it's funny because we were talking about recently how they should make an Elon ETF for all of his companies, but maybe you won't need to buy the Elon ETF. You'll just buy Tesla, which will have SpaceX and XAI. But we'll get into all of that and what it would mean for those stocks, specifically Tesla, the only one that's public right now. Mario's in the chat. What's up, Mario? Morning. Ooh, how do I say this? All from Oaxaca? Did I say that right? What's up, Mario? Welcome in here. Mario, you seem to always be on the move. Lucky guy, traveling. Then we will get into the gaming industry, which on Friday, many gaming stocks like Take-Two, Roblox, and Unity were plummeting after Google debuted their Project Genie, close Mexico, um, which was a piece of tech that could generate games in seconds. And people were very impressed by Google's Project Genie, and Unity was down 30+%. I think Roblox was down 15+%. Take-Two, I forget exactly, maybe between like 5 to 10%, but all of them were hit pretty hard. Was this an overreaction? Should you buy the dip on some of these stocks? We will get into all of that. Then a few more topics to go through. We have an update on NVIDIA and OpenAI and the landscape of AI with NVIDIA now looking like they are getting a bit of cold feet on a deal that they had agreed to go into with OpenAI. Let's check out NVIDIA. I believe they were down about 2% or so to start the day today. Where's NVIDIA? NVIDIA is down about just over 1.5% right now. So a little bit of an update there. We also had Oracle raising even more money to try and fund some of their obligations. So a lot going on with that whole AI circular economy that we've been covering. I see some new comments in the chat. Let's see. Good morning. It seems something is off. The news are not shaking the markets as expected. Can you also go into thoughts on ALLY and FHN for a bank short? We definitely can. Let me check out those stocks right now and see how the signals look in Prospero. Alley 45 upside, 53 downside, 61 net options sentiment. Doesn't look particularly, um, you know, it's not screaming a stock you must short. Ooh, this one, FHN, is a little bit more skewed to the downside. We have 37 upside with a 72 downside, but it does have a 74 net option sentiment, so a little bit uh, better outlook in the short term, bad outlook in the long term, though. I think I also saw a story about how the first bank to go under in 2026 happened last Friday. Was it in Chicago? With all the moves in the markets of gold and silver, I think it got caught up in that, but pretty crazy to see. Last but not least, we're going to have an ongoing segment in the streams in terms of the topics I'm bringing today. These ones I didn't even come up with because they are from our Discord, which, if you guys don't know, is linked in the description of the YouTube live stream. So if you're watching on X, head on over to YouTube, subscribe, and then you can check out the Discord link there. But we have a room or a channel in the Discord now for live stream requests, and we got some questions, and one of them was about trade alerts and how they will impact the investing strategy, pick diversity, duration of holding stocks, frequency of position changing, all of that good stuff. So we will get to that at the end of the stream today. Hopefully we have time. A lot of topics to go through here. But be sure to like it up, everybody. We've got a lot of people joining already. Thank you. Love the work you all do. Thank you so much. Glad you're liking the Prospero community app, signals, hopefully newsletters, all of the above. Appreciate the positive comment. James Burns, I did see your comment as well. Welcome. I think it's the first time I've seen you comment on the stream. Appreciate you joining the chat. All right, let's take a look around the markets and see how the Magnificent Seven are moving today, and if there's anything else to note before we jump into the topics in detail in just a moment. We have Tesla down, Microsoft, Meta down, Google green, Amazon, Apple green. Disney is a company that had earnings already this morning, pre-market. They were initially up on earnings and now down almost 5% on the day. So an interesting earnings move for them. A similar thing happened to SoFi last Friday, which a lot of our viewers seem to like and always want to hear us chat about. I saw they were initially up on their earnings, but then went down quite a bit on Friday as well. So if you guys are newsletter readers, you probably saw how it's a little bit of a changing tide in the market from buy the dip to sell the rip. So maybe we're seeing that with some of these earning moves this year as well, or this quarter. AMD up 4% from JC. AMD is one of the companies that will be reporting on Wednesday, I'm pretty sure. So we'll be live just before they report. AMD up 4%. Yes, they are. And AMD, let's see if they're outperforming NVIDIA year to date or not. So year to date, AMD is up 12.5%. NVIDIA is actually in the red, down just under 1% on the year. So outperforming NVIDIA is outperforming AMD. SMCI is also up, and they are reporting this week. An old favorite of the Prospero signals, hasn't been too bullish for a while, but always like to check in on some of the stocks that had looked good in the past and had been talked about a lot. So yeah, they're still under $30 per share though. So not great for anybody who got in on their insane run up in early 2024, 2 years ago. Wow. Now, wow. Was anybody here during the streams, watching the streams when SMCI was on that massive run? Any OG Prospero viewers? Their run was from like basically the start of January 2024 through March. They went on that crazy tear. Let's see. Was anybody here? Nobody in the comments was here? Oh well. Guys, George is about to join us any second. Be sure to like the stream if you enjoy the content. We go live, if you're not sure, if you're catching us for like the first time, we go live every Monday at 11 a.m. and every Wednesday at 3 p.m. basically every week. The only time we adjust is when there's like the market's closed on a Monday or some type of holiday, or we're pretty good at keeping the schedule. So mark it on your calendars. Happy to have you here. Keep on tuning back in. Provide a lot of insights. You could just check out the chat for everybody who's already excited for us to get into these topics here. And be sure to download the Prospero app if you haven't yet. That's also linked in the description. We have tons of links in the description for our TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, website, newsletters, all that good stuff. So you can scan through all that and follow, join wherever you are not yet, if there's any places left. This guy, you were here back in the day. You're officially a Prospero OG then. We are coming up on, I think, what is it going to be, 3 or 4 years of doing these live streams? We started in May. I would have to scroll back. I forget if it was 20. I think it was 20. It might have been 23. So I think we're coming up on 3 years of doing these live streams, which is just crazy to think about how fast time goes by. Really amazing. But a lot has happened in the market in the meantime over the course of those years. But let me keep looking and seeing if anything's moving interestingly here today. I did see Bitcoin was up today after a pretty bad weekend of downwards spiraling. We had mentioned the bear flag forming for Bitcoin earlier before it made this breakdown lower. I wonder how Michael Saylor is feeling today. Man, would I love to get him on the live stream and hear his thoughts of what's going on right now. This guy said caught SMCI from 250 to 800 thanks to George and the Prospero app. Let's go. That's the kind of stories we love to hear. Hopefully, it looks like you got out at 800 too, so hopefully the signals helped you enter and exit. Hello, George. Welcome to the stream today. Good to see you. We have so many great topics to jump into. I don't know even where to begin. I guess just, it's a little surprising to me. I don't know if it's surprising to you, seeing the markets open in the green here today after a pretty dismal Friday. And it seems like a lot of worrying headlines and concerns and just, fears beginning to make their waves across social media and a lot of the investor community. I guess, are you surprised that we opened up in the green? We are seeing the QQQ and SPY net option sentiments remain low. QQQ is at 5, SPY is at 0 right now. We have gotten some pretty good earnings, so maybe that could be what's keeping us afloat here as some concerns are building. But yeah, your latest thoughts on the market opening green today, and we got a lot more topics to jump into with a busy earnings week and a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have, like, it's the same thing we've been seeing. Like, I think the short pressure kind of overwhelmed the markets on Friday, and I think the apprehension in terms of the new Fed chair. But overall, I still just think there's a lot of positivity in the markets, a lot of desire to keep buying and buy the dip. I do think we are seeing some sell the rip too. We said that. I think we're seeing evidence of it, but you still have to respect the market upside.
So you mentioned the new Fed chair, and that is Kevin Warsh. And I feel like going into the announcement, it was being positioned that once it was announced, it'd probably be a bullish signal for the market because handpicked by Trump, would probably be, eager to cut rates. But like you said, it didn't really seem to buoy the markets at all when it was announced. Pretty bad day Friday, although, kind of coming back a little bit today. Do you have any opinion on Kevin, Mr. Warsh, and do you have any thoughts on him over Powell or his impact when he's going to be leading the Fed?
No, I mean, it's very hard to tell. He went out of his way to, I think, talk about being impartial, separate himself away from Trump and the idea that he was going to be impartial as much as possible, which is the only thing you should do in that situation, right? If he's not going to come out and be like, well, I'm going to do whatever, the White House says, because then he might not get confirmed, right? This isn't, the Senate where if you are aligned with a certain party, they're going to confirm you no matter what for something, right? As we've kind of seen on both sides over the years. But the Fed is not like that, right? It's specifically supposed to be an impartial, separated position. So I do think he had to say that, right? Otherwise, he might not get confirmed. Whether or not he actually will be independent, I'm not going to speculate on. But him saying he's going to be independent is worthless information because he'd have to be a complete moron to not say that. So we might play up his hawkishness a little more. But, in any article covering him, they also made sure to say, he emphasizes independence. He's viewed as more hawkish, but people believe him and the president are aligned on interest rates, right? And it was kind of always phrased like that, which is, also par for the course, right? Presidents have agendas. When they nominate someone, they're going to want someone that is aligned with their agenda. That's a very reasonable thing to pick, right? But it's fair for anyone to be concerned with the idea that someone might not be independent. We don't know that. And we don't know that part, right? We know that the president definitely seems to have an affinity for people that really want to push his agenda. But we don't know. And we might never know. Again, if they're smart, they'll know to keep what they say separated, whatever happens behind closed doors separated. So we might never know the extent that it's a natural alignment or a different kind of relationship than that. But all that being said, I am a little surprised because, I would think all of that would be known by the market and the market would understand that the rate cuts that it wants are coming.
Speaking of rate cuts coming, I'm wondering if the Fed is risking losing a bit of credibility because I saw a stat from Trueflation going around how the USA inflation at the current rate is now under 1%. I believe the statistic giving was 0.86% at the current moment. And I'm wondering, Kathy Wood has had this long-term thesis of how AI tech innovation is going to cause deflation in America. If the Fed, it remains in their stance, do you possibly see that happening in 2026 at any point where we enter a deflationary period? And how would that affect the markets if we were to see that?
So what's your theory on it being deflationary?
Kathy Wood just believes that with all the innovation and efficiency gains, that will cause deflation in the economy.
Okay, let me see if I follow her. More efficiency. Sometimes Kathy Wood, I don't know, because I don't agree. AI is going to make things more efficient, right? But right now, it's mostly free, and it's more free than it's ever going to be. So there's a very real like ROI necessity on that. So yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that statement. And I just don't like, we saw this even in something like cereal, where as prices started to go down again, the companies, wanted to keep their profits, but they lowered prices, but they also shrunk the size of things when they were growing, and they didn't change it back, right? So like, that's why like I don't believe that theory, right? Like, do I really believe Microsoft is going to lower prices if it's cheaper for them? No. They're going to increase their profits. Like, they're going to charge whatever they can get away with, not like their cost. Like, we can never trust tech companies to charge their cost for something. That's kind of an insane proposition. Like, the price of something in tech doesn't really have any goddamn thing to do with what a company can make it for. Like, on the hardware side, there's some of that, in that like they have to make some requisite profit margin off of it, right? But let's take that to its end, right? Do people even know how much is charged for like a high performance GPU in the cloud relative to the price? It's insane. Like, in some cases, you could in 6 months pay the total cost of something to use a high spec GPU as it would to just buy the whole thing. And like, where that becomes a necessity is like a company that needs, 100 H100s, like, probably doesn't want to have to deal with finding storage for that and all that. Like, there's something else beyond the cost, and at a certain point, the logistics, whatever, the idea that, your little server farm could lose power, or, whatever, or something could happen, and it would go down. Like, the nice thing about an AWS system, right, is if there's a problem, I mean, we've seen some outages, but generally the nice thing about an AWS system or any cloud system is that if there's an issue, they'll reroute you. It'll be containerized, ready to go in another system. And you could have redundant cloud systems, other places, but most large companies that have a ton of money just make that. But, for example, as Prospero grows, there will be a phase of our growth in our AI research where it will make more sense to say buy like 6 H100s and run them locally somewhere than pay for those cloud environments. Way more sense.
Well said.
But, sorry, I gotta like take it back to what I was saying. So you can see that example right there. Hardware where you're buying it directly, like, you have to lock in a certain minimum profit margin just for you and to run your business, and kind of what Wall Street wants as well. But you go too high, and there might be there might be substitutions, there might be other things. Like, this whole thing with AMD was basically that like NVIDIA got so expensive per token that, even with the fact that NVIDIA systems couldn't talk to AMD systems, it became relevant for a lot of smaller companies to start with AMD from the start, right? But, in the cloud cartel, they seem to be comfortable with overcharging everyone for it and locking in absolutely immense profit margins. And, some of that is just, we talk about headline risk a lot. Some of that is just headline risk. If you're running AMD chips instead of, NVIDIA chips, that's not a big deal if they break. Like, that's kind of viewed as more of an act of God. Like, AMD isn't selling like a bunch of faulty chips relative to NVIDIA, right? But if you're Goldman Sachs and you use some small cloud provider and your information gets hacked because it's in there. And maybe even if you're Goldman Sachs and you use a smaller cloud provider that doesn't have as much money for cybersecurity, like maybe that becomes a target because Goldman Sachs is a client there, right? It's not the same. And that's why these large cloud providers can gouge, because they know, because of their, cybersecurity, redundancy, the things that they offer there, they can gouge you for that reason. Versus if you're already using local hardware, it's a similar headline risk to NVIDIA and AMD.
So I got to turn to our comments on YouTube. We have Hussein back in the comments, and he was our insider on the Carvana scam company quote from our chat before they got a bear story. Now he's bringing up HTZ Hertz with personal
Oh yeah, I'm
account.
sorry, I saw that email. I should have gotten back to you. I'm really bad with that sometimes.
So do you agree that they are a good bear company? Said they look like a good bear pick in the signals, and he's bringing up some personal accounts of how they are maybe struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you look at things, and like pretty much everything we do at Prospero is I'll see a signal and then I'll check out the company and say, like, is my personal view of the value, fundamental, whatever have you situation similar to the view I see, right? And something like Hertz, I don't think I looked at it that recently. The challenge with something like Hertz is, I'm going to go look at the chart. Yeah, like right now, it's kind of doing a little bounce off the weekly. Let me see if it's the low point. Low, no, see, it's hit 470. It's hit 467 before 1121. It's also hit 471, 479. Last week it hit a low of 485, right? That is the kind of thing on the chart that makes me nervous, right? I get nervous shorting something at 502 that has bounced on all those like mid fours. I view as the upside is very limited. If I saw it break through that, maybe if I saw it go, I don't know. It's hard with this kind of thing, because it can always bounce a little lower. It can hit just like a slightly lower and then bounce pretty hard. So I would have to see like something like, I would say at least below like $4.25, kind of, a significant jump below the 479. And then I would also like to see something like net option sentiment moving lower on the downturn. That could get me behind something like that. I didn't know. I kind of had an instinct of that because I looked at Hertz and it had been something similar. But yeah, that is my challenge with something like Hertz. I don't like to short companies that have like bounced off similar levels as it did. And as it did again last week, bouncing off even higher than its previous lows.
So we got to turn to some of these companies reporting earnings this week. Palantir is today up 2.5% today, but down about 25% off all-time highs. Find themselves in a precarious situation, you'd say, I believe, if looking at the chart of them. How do you feel about them going into earnings today?
Ooh, let me see. They look pretty bad. 85. I mean, I really think 85 net option sentiment, only 58 upside. Remember, it was like at 100 not too long ago. So that's a little tough of a relationship. I would not be surprised if they had some big announcements at earnings, some beats, some up guidance. But this market is a little too tenuous for me. Like if I saw QQQ net option sentiment like in the 20s right now or rebound well today, I'd consider it. But yeah, I think that this market, I actually think generally why we play Palantir at earnings is the upside is higher than the downside. But I actually think in this market, the downside is higher than the upside.
So Is the momentum market already dead? Or if a stock like Palantir, which had just been on such a tear, if they were to drop, 10, 15 more percent off earnings, would that officially be the final dagger of killing the momentum market?
Um, Look, I think we're in the momentum market until further until further notice. And I go to be honest and say that I think we're still in the momentum market. Just a lot of that momentum is downwards right now. And some you see it with the growth stocks, and we're obviously in these stocks a lot. You see it with that, right? It's really hard for these companies that are hitting all-time highs that have very high forward EPSs for them to not get hit when they're hitting new all-time highs, right? I think ASTS is the perfect example of a stock that is going to be victimized if there's market uncertainty, right? The tough thing with ASTS and why we kept it this weekend, its net option sentiment was really high. And it's just it's such a headline-driven stock, and that's why we like a stock like ASTS and LEU, because you don't know the day that there's going to be a positive headline and send it soaring, right? That's why we're probably going to hold at least one of them for a long time, and reduce our risk exposure just by not owning both of them at the same time, because they're both going to get hit in the same situations. But yeah, that's a tough situation.
Yeah, spinning to AMD, which you mentioned a little bit, they have earnings this week as well. They're actually now outperforming NVIDIA almost 2x over the course of the past year, and up 12% year to date, while NVIDIA is in the red at the moment. Besides the earnings for AMD, what's your current position on AMD versus NVIDIA? Do you like one more than the other for the rest of the year?
Let's take a quick look. I mean, the thing for me with these companies, we'll take a look at the signals. AMD 66 upside, 83 net options. NVIDIA's been better lately. 96 upside. That's a lot from where NVIDIA's been. I wonder what's going on there. But only 62 net option sentiment. So I'm going to give you my little hack with companies like this. I would say in sectors or subsectors that I would view as generously priced. Here's the only thing I care about: net options, upside, and then I'm going to look at how far off of the high and the low they are. NVIDIA hit 211.32. Right now is at 189. AMD. This is why you check. 267.08. Right now is at 247.34. Right? So I like to simplify things as much as possible. Looking at that kind of simplified analysis, I think NVIDIA is the better option, but I wouldn't get any of them right now at their upside net option sentiment combo. We know that both of those can run a lot higher. But let's take a wandering through compute. NBIS 92 upside, 54 net options. That's really low for it. CoreWeave 88 upside, 77 net options. These are all very low net option sentiment for compute. What are any other names we're circling the wagons on?
There was a really interesting one on our full list this morning, RMBS. It was a similar play to SNDK. It's still there now, 96 upside, but it's only a $12 billion market cap, so it's a lot smaller than.
All right, let's do the test. That looks good. How close to its? Very close to its all-time high, but not quite there. Oh, earnings are today. Yeah, right. Am I going to look at that? But that's really interesting. A charge into earnings. Could be an interesting play. But a charge like that into earnings makes me nervous. Just because like it's another thing like Palantir where like you're up almost 10% going into earnings. I feel like any kind of disappointment, there's a lot of sensitivity to. But I mean, net option sentiment like that, going up like that, people could know something.
There are so many earnings this week. I'm going to rattle off a few like growth companies, and if any of them are catching your attention, just let us know. But all of these companies are reporting this week: Chipotle, PayPal, SMCI, LEU, Eli Lilly, Uber, Snapchat, MSTR, Reddit, Iron. Any of those more interesting than the rest?
LEU is interesting to know because I do not want to play earnings, but I do kind of hope that it gets hit and I can buy it, get back in it. Like I would like that. I'd probably wait 2 days, but that looks like an opportunity. SMCI could be like a big winner because I feel like they've gotten like hammered. They've got hammered a lot relative to their business. Iron's another interesting one. We've been circling the wagons on that a little bit. We did just have that senator buy. There could be something going on there. I hate earnings for MSTR just because it's like in a normal company, like, and we talked about this when we talked about like AI and margins a little bit, where it's just like one of the reasons who reported recently and got hammered on the margins. I think it was Microsoft. That was one of the reasons they got hammered on a change in margin mix and lower margins. It's really hard to predict, like even if a company is going to grow revenue or that, but like that at least you have a map for a little bit, and solid Wall Street predictions on something like a margin. You don't really have really good predictions on it. I mean, it's kind of embedded in the earnings, but something like product mix is very hard to predict. MSTR, you're not really even going on something as solid as a product mix, right? You're pretty much going almost like they have like a little like data business, but you're almost entirely going on like whatever Michael Saylor is saying about his strategy and what he's seeing and anything like that. And that's even harder to predict than a product mix because you don't know what he's got up his sleeve. And he is kind of like a Jensen Huang in the sense that it's like, or an Elon Musk, where like he can take, what he has, which is not great results, right? I think we reported at one point that his average on Bitcoin is something like 81,000 now. So he's underwater on that position. It's kind of going to be hard, for a Bitcoin expert to get up there and explain how someone who's been buying it from the beginning is, losing, like, is in an underwater position on Bitcoin right now. That's going to be a tough one for him to spin. But like, that's why, like, it's the same thing we talked about with Tesla earnings, like, where it's just like sales have been a little disappointing, but, Elon Musk can make lemonade out of, anything. Even one of the calls when they reported a huge sales hit, it was still up because of how he pumped everybody up about the robotics and the self-driving cars and everything. So that's why it is like, if things were lining up better for MSTR right now and there was better, more obvious bull things on the legislation or anything like that, that's a situation where it's like, okay, there's a good situation, and I would bet on Michael Saylor getting people hyped about that good situation. But in this situation for earnings, I don't really want to bet on him turning, obvious lemons into lemonade, or bet against his ability to do that, because both are truths, and it's too hard to say which one is going to win out.
And Bitcoin had a pretty bad Friday and weekend, now hitting a new low over the course of the last year or so, 52-week low. And, we've been covering gold and silver. They had horrific days on Friday and down again today. You actually said on a stream like that silver could drop like 20, 30% a day. And I was like, There's no way it's going to do that. Like it's like a multi-trillion-dollar market cap, and lo and behold, I think later that week down 33% in a day.
I
Even though
believe I
you
said
said that,
20. Yeah, but
were you
yeah, it's still
surprised to see it move that much? I mean, that's insane for such a large asset to move like that.
no, but I mean, it's for why I said, which is just that, like, those institutions that own so much and they own both like the actual silver and the derivative instruments, right? That's what's kind of different about it, because they have triggers for both of these things, right? And when, I don't know if it was the actual, silver or the derivative, it was probably the actual silver that started to sell off first, and then, or silver futures, and then, the derivative instruments, the ETFs. Like, once that happens, one sells, the other sells more, and then, it creates a chain reaction. So that's why I say that, because most of the time, if you just have a stock sell off, it's just the stock. But you can have this kind of like triggering effect now that you have all these, you have ETFs that mimic the hard material. You have these companies that own silver or silver derivatives or whatever. And so you do get that effect where one sells, the other sells more. That causes more people to dump the underlying. So I do think that that's why I say things like that, because when there's momentum up, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. And when you have that much momentum up, look at meme stocks. It's very similar. What goes up must come down. The more something, like, it doesn't matter how much, quote unquote, value there is to something. Right? And I put that in quotes because, like, we're talking about very different things in silver and, GameStop. But what they have in common is anything that appreciates so much and just like blows past all-time highs, it is at the mercy of profit-taking and high-frequency traders, right? And why high-frequency traders work so well is humans get attached to things. There's a really good Ray Dalio story where I think like his head trader owned a bunch of gold, and Ray Dalio he had some interaction with a jeweler, and I couldn't, or it was like his sister or something talking about how she was going to like sell her gold because like some of her jewelry, because like the prices of it were so high. And he called up his head trader, who he generally gave full autonomy to, and was like, sell your position. And he was like, the head trader was like, I'm not going to sell my position. And he's like, see, I know we normally have these conversations as if I'm not the boss, but I am, and I'm telling you to sell that position. And, went up a little more, and like I think the guy was giving him a hard time, but then like not a few days later, it crashed. And they had a conversation after that, which was, kind of like the guy coming back, like, hat in hand, a little bit. And it was like something that was like, great. Why I think he's so like such a good leader, is like the guy was kind of like apologetic, and he was just like, no, like, you did your job, I did mine. But that's all to say, people get very attached to their trades, right? I get attached to mine, and I'm always telling people not to get attached. But a lot of the times I'm very signal driven, and so people are like, why did you sell it? Like, why did you move that? Blah, 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 whatever. And I'm just like, look, I don't necessarily disagree that there's still more upside. I just have to take certain risk management practices. And high frequency traders are much better at that than me. And it's just like, there's certain amounts of velocity acceleration that they won't tolerate for their positions. And that's what creates these very fast speeds. Because what happens are it starts to fall, and the best ones, the Citadels of the world, the people that have spent a lot of money for low level programming in their database systems that are optimized for speed and the fastest connections to the internet, they're going to act first. And then obviously when that momentum happens, lower budget, high frequency traders are going to be right behind that. And that's how it goes in today's market. And that's why, if you use stop losses, sometimes you think you should have gotten out at something, 2-3% higher, and the market opens and you had your stop loss and you're just like, wait, it opened at this price. Why did I get out 3% lower than that? Because all of those algorithms know how to act faster than you. And part of what they're using, by the way, to know how fast to act is other people's stops. And those high frequency traders are projecting and being like, oh, like I better get out here because once it hits this price, the bottom's going to fall out.
Yeah, that's some high level talk right there. That's like something I feel like a lot of people don't hear often. I know we got a hard out, but I want to try to get to two more topics. So let's try to hit these. We had Take-Two, Roblox, and Unity all dropping a lot on Friday. Unity was down over 30% off of Google's Project Genie, which showed their ability to create gaming engines in like seconds. Do you think the drop was an overreaction? Some people were saying that the network effects of like Roblox and GTA are the things that drive the value for them. So like it doesn't matter if a game can be created because people are already there. So what are your thoughts on the gaming industry? Did this reshape it as much as those stocks moved?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think they got hit too hard because I agree with that statement. I know a bunch of people that still play super old, outdated video games. And they're like very attached to their, like, gamers are very attached to their versions. They also like new things. So I think it's a bit of an overreaction. That being said, we don't, what you always have to be open to with, I think, especially AI, Moore's law. Moore's law is that, technology is improving at an exponential rate, right? We can't necessarily predict how that changes. And like, I think Genie alone isn't necessarily that big of a game changer, but I do believe the next generation of games, like VR games, like maybe you don't want to play World of Warcraft or, Dota anymore. If like your other option is like a VR game in which you control the parameters and can like build a game and a situation on the fly in virtual reality, like we might be talking about like the literal Matrix where you're like, teach me Kung Fu and I want to be able to fly,
Well, aren't we in a simulation now, George? You could be in that already.
I saw a really good, like, it was someone on, I think, Lex Friedman. It was basically like, simulation theory is just engineers oversampling on their knowledge base and thinking that they're the gods. Because the idea of, the idea that there's like a creator that's watching you is like, that's what they've been doing since the days of Christianity. It isn't an original idea. They're just making the God, they're computing God. And I actually thought that was the most interesting way to ever put it. And like, I kind of was like, oh, it might be a simulation. When I heard that, I was like, oh, I might be sampling my own bias on that one too, because I'm super into AI and futurism. And I was like, oh, I think validating that theory might be like my version of being like, oh yeah, Christianity makes sense. Like, because it suits the knowledge base that I already have.
Mm-hmm. All right, lastly, quick thoughts on Elon Musk. He floated the idea of merging all of his companies together, basically. How do you think that would go if that were to happen?
Unprecedented. I do think Elon Musk is the only person. I do believe it was the only person that that could pull it off. Maybe, Jensen Huang, I obviously talk about them in similar fashions. You have to get the votes right? And he got that insane votes for the pay package at Tesla. Like normally I would say like a company of Tesla's size, like I would normally say, no way. Because like what should happen is Tesla should acquire XAI, or, you know, SpaceX is like a pretty big one. Even then, like it's a big acquisition, but companies eat other companies that are fairly large. What I think SpaceX is supposed to, I think it's $1 trillion.
I saw 1.4 recently.
Yeah, that is pretty big. I mean, he can merge that. XAI has a pretty big valuation. It would be unprecedented, but normally that's a tough sell to your shareholders, just because like focus is normally very important to Wall Street. And if there's this big pool of money and you don't know if it's going to go to building cars or whatever, but you know, the other thing is that I do believe he could sell it, right? Is because it's different. A lot of it is like AI technology driven, and those companies all working together on AI could be highly beneficial, pooling their resources on that. But he's kind of doing that anyway with XAI and like, you know, doing that kind of thing. But yeah, I think he could pull it off, and it could be very interesting, just as how much that whole thing could be valued together. I mean, he could certainly give himself quite the pay package on that larger entity. But yeah, got to jump in a second. Why did we go long TMC? Because we wanted to have a certain amount of long positions to hedge upside, downside, and materials was looking more stable. And, you know, it's kind of what I'm talking about. I have a lot of faith in TMC long term, as I do LEU and ASTS. And it just happened to be that at that time, TMC was a lot closer to its, you know, its recent low than LEU or ASTS. So I just viewed that as a safer pick as a result. And it did bounce today, you know, more than say ASTS. So maybe you should have been a little more patient with it.
Well, that's going to do it for the stream today. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody who viewed. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Like it up before you leave, and have a great rest of your day trading, and we'll see you all Wednesday. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody.